Let's talk about parts of speech. Today we're talking about pronouns. Let's talk about pronouns. A pronoun is a word used in the place of a noun or noun phrase to increase clarity and decrease redundancies, unnecessary repetition, within a sentence or paragraphs. In other words, pronouns help us make sure that we're not super repetitive, and they help us make sure that our ideas are clear so we know exactly who we're talking about. Our learning targets are: I can identify pronouns in a sentence. I can determine what a noun and pronoun replaces or describes. And finally, I can evaluate how pronouns help me understand point of view. For a text connection, check out Two Kinds in our story from our workbook. A pronoun is defined as a word or phrase that is used to replace a noun or noun phrase, which is known as the pronoun's antecedent. The antecedent means to come before. Below, the pronoun is in red and the pronoun antecedent is in green. So, Amy took piano lessons. She had a recital afterwards. She is a personal pronoun. Amy is the antecedent. So the antecedent is the noun that comes before and tells you what the pronoun is talking about. Sometimes the antecedent is within the same sentence, and sometimes it's just within the same paragraph. Make sure when you're writing, you're noticing how your antecedents and pronouns relate so that you don't have any vague pronouns. In our second example, Mr. Chong was Amy's teacher. He was very strict. He is the pronoun. Mr. Chong is the antecedent. Can you find the pronouns and pronoun antecedents in the following sentences? Take a second to pause the video and see if you can figure them out. Here's our answers. Amy's mother had a difficult life in China. She had high expectations for Amy. She is the pronoun. The antecedent is Amy's mother, because that's who she is referring to. Auntie Lindo had a daughter who competed with Amy. Who is the pronoun. Daughter is the antecedent, because the who is referring to daughter. And finally, Amy realized that her mom's intentions were pure. Her is the pronoun. Amy is the antecedent, because her is replacing Amy within the sentence. There are many categories of pronouns. Here are some of the main ones. First, we have indefinite pronouns. Those are the ones that refer to unspecified objects, beings, or places, such as anyone, somebody, whichever, whoever, nobody, or something. Then we have the personal pronouns. These are probably the ones you're most familiar with. These are associated with a certain person, thing, or group, such as they, them, we, us, she, her, he, him, and you. Next, we have reflexive pronouns. These are ones preceded by the adverb, adjective, pronoun, or noun they refer to, such as herself, himself, yourselves, or themselves. Next, we have demonstrative pronouns. These are used to indicate something specific in a sentence. In other words, they demonstrate something, such as this, that, these, and those. Next, we have possessive pronouns, those that show possession or ownership, such as mine, its, his, hers, yours, theirs, or whose. And we have relative pronouns. These are used to add more details to nouns and introduce an adjective clause. For example, which, that, and whose. Notice that whose falls under both categories. It's really not important that you remember which category it falls into, but that you remember that it can function as a pronoun. Next, we have interrogative pronouns. Those introduce a question. Pretend you're using an interrogative pronoun to interrogate somebody. Interrogative pronouns are who, which, what, whose, and whom. Next, we have reciprocal pronouns. Those are expressing relationship between nouns, such as each other and one another. Finally, we have intensive pronouns. Those that end in self or selves to emphasize their antecedents and emphasize who is doing the action. So if you said, I can do it myself, that would be intensive. Or we can learn ourselves. Or finally, the door closed spookily, all by itself. Pronouns and point of view. One key idea with pronouns is that they can help you understand what point of view a piece of writing is in, whether it's first person, second person, or third person. First person means that the narrator is telling the story from their perspective. Second person places the reader in the story. And third person has an outside narrator telling the story. Pronouns and point of view continued. First person is I, me, my, mine, myself, we, us, our, and ourselves. If you're writing in first person, you are the part of the story, or the narrator is the part of the story. Second person is you, your, yours, yourselves, yourselves. You rarely see a story written in second person. However, if you've ever picked up like a choose your own adventure story, that's probably written in second person. For example, it might say, you walk down a dark corridor and you're faced with two doors. Do you choose the right or do you choose the left? That would be second person. Third person is when the narrator is outside the story. Usually, they would use one of these pronouns. He, him, his, himself, she, her, hers, herself, it, its, itself, they, them, their, theirs, and finally, themselves. A couple reminders about pronouns. In writing, it is important to make sure you avoid vague or unclear pronouns. To correct a vague pronoun, replace it with the noun it is describing. Example, as soon as Belinda saw Bella, she waved hello. Because there are two names here, I'm not sure who's waving hello to me. This would be an example of a vague pronoun, and something that you want to avoid in your writing. Second, pronouns must always agree in gender and number with the noun they replace. And finally, when you are using the letter I as a personal pronoun, referring to I can do it, it must always be capitalized. Say it with me. I can capitalize the letter I when I use it to refer to myself. Yes, I know you can. Remember, a pronoun is a word used in the place of a noun or noun phrase to increase clarity and decrease redundancies. Ooh, that's a tongue twister. It is important to pay attention to pronouns when you are determining point of view in a piece of writing. Hopefully, now you can identify pronouns in a sentence, determine what noun a pronoun replaces or describes, and you can evaluate how pronouns help you understand point of view. Thank you for listening.